Hello, everyone, and welcome to February's edition of Habitat Learn and Ask. I am so excited to be here with you all, and I'm so excited that I could drag Josh Turner into talking to you all today. Josh was my very first boss here at Habitat, and I now get to drag him into doing things and teach him how to do things instead of me constantly learning from him and also playing the very fun game of Josh, hypothetically, if I, and insert horrible thing I messed up on a construction site. The tables have turned, and here we are today.
True story.
It is. It was a great game. So a couple things before we get started today. We will be answering questions at the end of this session, but feel free to ask them at any point during the webinar. There is a questions section over in the control panel that popped up when you joined this webinar. Feel free to put them in at any time, but as I said, we'll answer them all at the end of the webinar. There's also a chat feature. You can't chat with anyone else in the audience, but it does come to me. So if you're having issues with audio or something, I can try to help you. Usually it's something that's out of my control, but I will do my best to help. I think that's most of the housekeeping that we have. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to Josh to talk about sustainability today.
All right, thanks, Alex. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Josh Turner. I'm the director of the new construction program with Habitat Charlotte region. I've been with Habitat Charlotte for about 11 and a half years now. I started out in the AmeriCorps program, and I was a construction supervisor for a number of years, which is when I was Alex's boss for a time. And I'm now managing the new construction program as a whole, so spending less time on the sites, on specific sites, but kind of managing all of them. I apologize if you hear kid noises in the background. I've got two daughters that are roaming about the house during the presentation. So, all right, I will go ahead and get started. So today's topic is sustainability in construction. So we're going to be talking about how Habitat works to make homes more sustainable, both in the way that we build them and in the finished product that the homeowners get to enjoy. And as Alex said, feel free to put questions. Oh, Alex, I'm getting a box that says screen sharing is paused. What did I do?
In the sharing section, there's a big circle. Oh, there we go.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay, super. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, if you guys have any questions or if you think of topics that I didn't cover during the presentation, feel free to type them in, and Alex will pass them on to me at the end. So we'll start by just talking about why sustainability is important in construction. And so, it's important all the way through. During the construction phase, the sustainable practices and strategies that we use help to reduce waste on the job site and enable us to build more efficiently, which in turn, of course, enables us to build more homes with the resources that we have. And our resources are very valuable, as many of them are donated by supporters like you all, and we have good partnerships with suppliers. So we want to make sure we're using those to the best of our ability. And then after occupancy, when the home is finished and the homeowners move in, an energy efficient home will help them to have lower utility bills, for hopefully the entire time they're in the home. And it also creates a more comfortable environment for the homeowner. I think everybody can relate with, being in a house in the winter and, if you're sitting near a window, maybe feeling a lot of drafts, you can feel very chilly inside the home, even if the heat is set to a reasonable setting. So what we try to do is make the overall environment as comfortable as possible by eliminating drafts and doing a lot of other things that we'll be talking about here today. So during the construction process, just a few things that we focus on for sustainability. One of those is reusing extra lumber, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later on. But one of the coolest parts about Habitat Charlotte's building program, I think, is that we have a crew of volunteers who work in our warehouse every Tuesday, and they pre-build a lot of the framing components, we call them, that go into the walls, like the window frames and special pieces that join two walls together in a corner. Those are called tees and ladders. We'll see some picture of those later. But when we have extra lumber on the job sites after a build, we'll bring that lumber back to the warehouse, and the crew there will cut it down and use it to as part of those framing components that we can use on future houses. We also are constantly working on adjusting material takeoffs. So if we realize that we always get 20 extra studs on this one house plan, we can change those, and we can keep an eye on what suppliers are sending us to make sure that they're sending what we order. And as we adjust our building practices as building codes change or energy codes change, we're constantly keeping an eye on what we're ordering and if it's the right amount of whatever material it is. We also try as much as possible to have separate waste containers. So that will be, we'll have a dumpster for construction debris only. And those dumpsters on new construction are, whenever we can get them, they're categorized as a multi-sort dumpster, which means that when it's taken away, they'll sort out the wood scrap from the drywall scrap from the shingles, and try to recycle or dispose of those in the best way possible for each individual material. And then we also will have, we'll keep the food trash separate. So when groups bring lunch to site, or if we have wrappers or pizza boxes or whatever, we keep that separate and out of the construction dumpster, because nobody wants to sort through a construction dumpster full of old food trash. And that helps keep things a little bit easier on the recycling side. And then finally, we'll try to collect plastic water bottles and things like that separately and take them to a recycling center. And then finally, well, I wouldn't say this is an exclusive list, but the main points, we do sustainable building programs and get all of our new homes certified to certain energy efficiency standards. And so those programs have benchmarks and certain things that we have to accomplish throughout the entire build process from the start to the finish. And we'll talk about a little bit more about those now. So there are two programs that we use in new construction. So all of our new construction homes are built to, at a minimum, Energy Star standards. And then we build at least half of them to System Vision standards, which is a slightly higher level of certification. So homes that are built on concrete slabs get the System Vision certification, and homes that are built on crawl spaces get the Energy Star certification, just because of some of the complexities of the way the buildings are put together and what's required for the certifications. We found that's what works best for our building process and our building model. Both systems are very similar, and both provide the homeowners with a very energy efficient home. So we'll get a little bit nerdy here and talk about why air sealing and insulation are very important. And this is one of the main factors for all of our energy efficiency programs. So I don't know if any of you have heard of the stack effect. I can't hear or see you anyway, so I'll just imagine a few of you maybe raising your hands. But the stack effect is something that happens in homes particularly, but really any building, where since hot air rises, this is most evident in the winter, but as the air inside your home is heated up by the HVAC system, it wants to rise. So it ideally will be the warmest at the ceiling level. But if there are any gaps in the drywall, hopefully you guys can see my mouse pointing out spots on this graphic here on the right-hand side, but where electrical outlets or light switches come through, where you have light fixtures or fans on the ceiling, any spot where there's even the tiniest space, some of that hot air can escape. It'll come up through the attic and then out through the attic vents. And as that air is escaping, it actually pulls cooler air in through the lower part of the house. So if there are any, in the same way that we're concerned about gaps and cracks and stuff at the roof level, we're also concerned about it at the foundation and the floor level. So as that hot air is escaping through the roof, it's drawing in cooler air through any cracks around the windows, or a poorly sealing door, weather stripping, all kinds of different places that air can sneak in there. So a lot of our work at the during the construction process is to limit that stack effect. So we focus on sealing, doing pretty extensive air sealing around windows in the actual studs to the wall framing members. We air seal around those. And we, part of what we do in our construction process is to engineer different ways to fit insulation into difficult areas. So on the next slides, I'll be showing some pictures of the framing components, but essentially where you have an exterior corner of the house, typically, historically that would have been framed with a solid, beam or, several studs nailed together. But we try to frame those a little bit differently so that we can fit some insulation back in those hard to insulate areas, and that helps to keep more of the heat in the house. And then we also focus especially on the installation methods and quality of installation of the insulation. Oh, I just wrote installation there twice. Whoops. Hopefully nobody saw that typo. But installation of insulation. So we will make sure that it's fully filling whatever cavity it's in, that it doesn't have any gaps, voids, or compressions. And we split the insulation. So if there's an electrical wire running through the wall, we put half of the insulation behind it and half in front of it so that we don't end up with gaps on either side. So we got a little bit nerdy there. Hopefully everybody followed that. But these are some pictures of homes, Habitat homes under construction. Hopefully you guys can see these all right. So this is an exterior wall. So that sheathing there is nailed onto these studs. This is looking at it from the inside of the house. And you'll see that white caulking that goes around all four sides of every stud bay in the house. We either use caulking or spray foam, a couple different products you can use there, but that seals any drafts, from the exterior coming to the interior around the wall framing members. The center picture here, this is the corner of a window looking at it from the inside, and this, the wood framing there is the window frame. And you can see some spray foam that we've sprayed in that gap there. That foam actually has some insulating value, and it also seals for air drafts as well. And then the picture on the right-hand side here, this is what we call a ladder. This is where the exterior wall with the sheathing on it intersects with this interior wall. You can see these two studs here. And this ladder gives us a nailing surface for that interior wall. And then we can also stuff some insulation behind that little spot right there to get a little bit better insulation value all the way around the home. This here is the corner I was talking about. So this is two exterior corners coming together. And it's kind of hard to tell from the picture, but you can see some orange foam back in there. The way that corner has been framed, we were able to fit more insulation back in the corner than you would in a typical historical new construction home. Over here on the right-hand side, we use some of these techniques fall under what's called advanced framing. And so we have the roof trusses here are lined up directly above a wall stud everywhere that they fall. And so that allows us to have less studs in the wall and therefore more insulation, while still having a sturdy wall that supports all the loads in the house correctly. And then finally, this picture here is a few short walls that are ready to be installed, and you can see that blue foam that's stapled onto the bottom of it. On the bottom of all our walls, we put that foam gasket, and that when the weight of the wall is pressing down on it, that seals the bottom of the wall to the floor surface and prevents drafts from coming in that location as well. So moving on to the windows. So these are two windows. We use some of this blue foam insulation on the headers of the windows. Historically, headers are not insulated at all, so they're a cold spot in the wall. But we put a little bit of insulation in there. Got a close-up of it up here on the right-hand side. You can still see that we still have the solid header that supports the load properly. And we also have that little bit of insulation, which acts as a thermal break and prevents that header from being a cold spot on the wall. Okay, a couple other focus areas during construction. The plumbing supply lines that run underneath the slab and underneath the house are insulated. And then inside the wall cavities and the actual house itself, you can see the picture on the bottom there, all of the hot water lines are insulated along their entire run. So that that allows the water that's in those hot water pipes to stay hotter longer, so that ideally, when you turn on the hot water in the bathroom, you don't have to wait 5 minutes for it to heat up and waste water that entire time. It should happen a lot more quickly. We also installed plastic sheeting, which you can see on the slab picture on the right-hand side there. We install those under the concrete slabs and then on the ground in the crawl space, which prevents moisture and air from penetrating up through the floor system and into the house. On every house, we have a passive radon ventilation system, which is either on a crawl space, it's the crawl space vents that are built in, and on a slab, we have a PVC pipe that runs from underneath the slab straight up through the roof to allow radon gas to ventilate naturally. We also, those systems can be converted to an active system with a fan installed if there is environmental conditions that end up requiring that in the future. And then we also seal, during the construction process, we seal our drywall to the top plates of the wall, and that prevents any air that's behind the drywall in the wall cavity from traveling up into the attic as part of that stack effect that I was talking about a few slides ago as well. All right, so moving on to, that was kind of a survey of the some of the strategies that we use. So there's really a lot that we do during the build process, little details. A lot of it is detail work, making sure every little spot gets sealed correctly. But how do we know that we've done a good job, you may be wondering. And so we get every home tested by a third-party energy rating company. And so they do both what we call a blower door and a duct blaster test. If you're not familiar with those, this picture in the center here is a picture of a red fabric device that fits over a door opening in the house, and it's got a fan built into it with a lot of electronic sensors attached to it. And essentially what they do for the blower door, and it's a similar device for the duct blaster. The duct blaster is only on the HVAC system, but the blower door, this diagram on the right here is a little bit fuzzy, but I think it gives a good basic picture. So that fan in the door unit will blow air out of the house. And so when you're doing this test, you want to make sure all the windows and doors and everything inside the house is shut properly and tightly. And so while that blower door is blowing air out of the house, it puts negative pressure on the house. And so then you can feel, and I've been a part of many of these tests, you can walk around and even with your hand, you can usually feel if there's air coming in at a window or through an electrical outlet, and that'll help you to know spots that you need to seal. And the energy raters also use this test. It gives a certain rating based on how much air it senses is coming through, and that we have to meet certain targets that are identified by the energy organizations and are based on the size of the house that we're building. So that takes place at closer to the end of the project. During the build process, with kind of all the pictures that I was showing you guys a couple slides ago, the energy raters also come and do a visual inspection of the framing details and the insulation to make sure that it's installed properly, and to make sure that all that air sealing of the stud bays and corners and all that is done properly. So they do a visual inspection at framing time when the insulation is installed, and they do this blower door and duct blaster test very close to the completion of the project. The HVAC company is also required to do a load calculation analysis and submit that to the raters. And so that certifies that they've selected the correctly sized HVAC equipment for the size of the home and the cooling and heating loads that they're anticipating, making sure that it's balanced between all the different rooms so that one room isn't 60 degrees and the other one's 75 degrees when you're trying to have them both be 68. So that they have to do calculations and submit those, and that's part of the rating process as well. This is an example of a home energy rating certificate. This is from an actual Habitat house that was completed earlier this year. The big thing that a lot of people look for, especially when buying a home, is the HERS rating. That's this sort of thermometer looking scale in the center there. You can see the standard new construction home built to current minimum code standards will score about 100 on the HERS index. And the average habitat home usually comes in between 50 and 60 on the HERS index, and the lower the score you have, the better. So we're really happy about these ratings, and we think we get them very consistently. So it's we've developed a good strategy for making sure we get the insulation correct, and the air sealing, and the HVAC equipment and all that. But so every homeowner for Habitat will get one of these certificates after the testing is completed. It says that the verified certification. It'll also tell you your estimated annual energy usage, and give you a little bit of analysis if a homeowner wants to add solar panels to the home, what kind of savings they can expect to see from that. All right, so after all that construction is done, and after we've gotten the testing successfully completed, then it's time for the homeowner to move in. So once the homeowner moves in, this is, again, not an exhaustive list, but just some of the benefits that result from the focus on sustainability that we place during the build process are better air quality, because you have less air infiltration from the crawl space or the slab or the attic, and that air infiltration primarily happens as a result of that stack effect. So you can think about a house built on a crawl space. If it was built to minimum code standards, there would not be a lot of air sealing present. And so if you have that damp crawl space air that is able to be just kind of sucked up through the building structure through the stack effect, you're going to end up with some bad air quality in the home, and mold spores can infiltrate and that kind of thing. So the air quality is really improved as a result of this. And we also build in a fresh air intake into every HVAC system, which means that whenever the heat or the AC is running, it actually draws in a little bit of outside air, not from the crawl space, but from basically around the top of the wall. So it's just regular fresh air from the outside, and it conditions that air and blows it into the house. So that makes sure that you always have fresh air in the house whenever the system is running. We also make sure that all of our plumbing fixtures and appliances are WaterSense rated. So the toilets and sink, like kitchen faucets and bathroom faucets and all that stuff is WaterSense rated. They're low flow fixtures, so that they don't use as much water as traditional ones may have. And all these things, the water savings, the electricity savings from not having the AC run as long as it normally might, will lead to lower utility bills. And so that is a huge help, I think, to all of our families. And many of them are coming from apartment complexes or different living situations that are, I can almost guarantee that they don't have any air sealing. So heat and AC may have to run almost constantly during the hottest and coldest days of the year, but that's no longer the case in the Habitat homes. So all of this, leads to a more comfortable environment. It feels more comfortable to your senses, and it also is, mentally more comfortable knowing that the air quality is good in the home as well. And then, as I mentioned on the energy certificate on the last slide, I think the HERS rating will help add value to the home when selling it. So if a homeowner needs to move to a different city or whatever the case might be, and puts the home up on the market, that can help add to the value, because the prospective buyer would be happy to see that they're going to have lower utility bills on that home. So I think that about sums it up. I guess we would open it up for questions now, Alex.
Yep. Just a reminder, the question, or you can ask questions in the control panel that popped up when you joined GoToWebinar. There's a little section that says questions. Usually you just have to make it bigger and type it in. While we're waiting for a few questions to pop in, I just want to point out, if anyone's been on a construction site and you've been handed a tube of caulk and say, go caulk those studs to the wall, I think most people, when I ever told them that on a construction site, looked at me like, are you just giving me busy work? Like, this seems like the most pointless job in the world, but it's actually one of the most important things we do.
Yeah,
I always thought it was so funny when people just look at me like, what?
It may seem like busy work, but it's not, I promise.
Yeah, it's very important. And doing it with a crew of volunteers goes much faster than just a crew of 2 AmeriCorps and a site supervisor doing that by themselves. Yeah. You guys seem very quiet with no questions. Josh told me he has no meetings this afternoon until like 3 o'clock. You have them for 2.5 hours if you have.
Yeah, fire away, guys.
I'm here to. I'm just going to keep them here for as long as possible. You know, that year of just long construction days. This is my turn to keep them here now. Well, Michelle didn't ask a question, but she said you did a great job, Josh.
Oh, thanks, Michelle.
Well, I will say, if you guys, oh, we got one. Can you talk a little bit about what energy saving steps are put into a critical home repair project?
Yeah, I can, although I have to admit that critical home repair is not my area of expertise. I am only responsible over the new construction side, but I do know that in home repair, I guess maybe I should say don't quote me on this, but I do know that a lot of the work that they do involves replacing heating and air conditioning systems, and it also involves mitigating environmental hazards in crawl spaces and in ductwork and that kind of thing. So I would say I can't give you a very thorough answer on that one because I don't want to step out of or speak out of turn. But I know that you know, the result of the work that the home repair program does is a much more comfortable and safe home for the homeowners.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that also depends on what they're doing in each house. It's not that there's a list, like in new home construction, we have a set of things that we do for each and every house. But critical home repair, it sort of depends on what the project is more.
Yeah, the scope of work is different for every project. That is true.
Do these sustainability considerations add considerable cost to building homes?
They do add a cost, but they also can help to bring in more grant funding, if that makes sense. So there is a cost associated with the certification with the third-party energy raters, but the fact that we're building these energy certified homes helps us to, you know, I guess I don't know what the right word is, acquire additional funding that we may not have been able to achieve otherwise. And so that's one of the factors that we consider with this. Some of you who've been volunteering with us for a while may remember that we, for a time, were building homes to LEED standards. And after doing that for several years successfully, we determined that we're basically doing all of the same, we're achieving the same result using Energy Star and System Vision as we did using LEED, but LEED was a more expensive program for us. So we made the decision to kind of balance that out by shifting out of the LEED program, but maintaining Energy Star and System Vision, and also maintaining the same energy efficiency standards. It just reduced the certification costs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it balances itself out a little bit in the grand scheme of our building costs and projects.
Yeah, the benefit to the homeowners is certainly worth the extra cost as well. The long-term benefit, they're going to save a lot more in their heating and cooling costs than we were paying out on the front end.
Well, it's just about noon, so I think we're going to wrap it up. If anyone, as soon as this webinar ends, you're like, "Ooh, I have a question," you'll get
it's too late.
You'll get an email from GoToWebinar after this saying thank you for joining us. You can reply directly to that email, and it will come to me. And you can just respond with your questions, and either I can answer them or I will pass it along to Josh to get a better answer for you, depending on what the question is. So don't feel like this is over. There's no more questions. It's done. So feel free to do that. Just to let everyone know, we will not be having a March Habitat Learn and Ask because that would be on the 5th, but on March 11th, we are having our Building Future Symposium, which is a very big virtual event. So we are taking the month of March off, but we hope you all join us on the 11th at our Building Future Symposium. You can find more information on that on our events page at habitatcltregion.org. And I hope you join us for that. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Josh, for being here today, and we will see you all in April. Bye.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.